There's a secret to changing your life and mine too, and we're going to talk about it. Welcome to Journey at Home, where we create content to make it simple for you to follow Jesus and live a better life. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of this new series, and it'll get us in the algorithm where other people see this helpful content. And let's get started, because better begins right here. Now, whether you're someone who's a Christian or not, somebody who follows Jesus, or maybe you haven't yet made that decision or you're not sure, one of the things that we can all agree on is we prefer to be happy over unhappy, don't we? And it's that desire for happiness that influences most of the decisions we make. It's also the desire for happiness that creates so much of the frustration we feel. I mean, have you ever wanted to change some area of your life, but it just felt too hard? Or you ever tried to change an area of your life, but you couldn't stick with it? Well, sure. I mean, maybe you want to be the family that eats dinner around the table every night, but the thought of figuring out what to cook and then finding the time to get it done, it's just overwhelming. Or you want to be the person who's physically healthy, but the thought of exercising and eating well just feels too daunting. Well, I have some good news for you. What if I told you that you don't have to change everything to see everything change? In other words, what if you could improve just one thing and it would improve everything for you? There's a thing called systems thinking, and in this, they have what they refer to as a leverage point. A leverage point is a place in a system where one change can lead to a significant and positive impact on the entire system. For example, if you add fruits and vegetables into your diet, studies have shown that you'll have lower blood pressure, you'll reduce the risk of heart disease and stroke, it will prevent certain types of cancer, it will improve your blood sugar, and it will lower the risk of vision problems. So one change impacts your entire physical health system in a positive way. That is a leverage point. So in this series, Love, Money, and the American Way, we're going to discover the leverage point that leads to the happiness we all pursue. So let me ask you, what do you think are the leverage points that would make you happier? In other words, if you were going to change one thing in your life that you were confident was going to make everything better, what would you change? I feel pretty confident I can guess your answer, and the only reason I say that is because, well, the American Way says happiness comes from improving one of two areas. The first one is love. So you would probably talk about relationships. Maybe it's your relationship with your spouse, your partner, your kids, your parents, your friends, your coworkers, your classmates. You know, all those relationships, they're going to impact your happiness in life. And then there is the leverage point of money. How much money we make, save, spend, all of that has an impact on our happiness. So when you hear somebody say, "Oh, money doesn't make you happy," isn't it true? You just kind of want to look back and go, well, fine, give me yours then. I'll test the theory for myself. Because we all believe money's going to contribute to our happiness. So you could sum up our entire American way of life and mindset with those two words, love and money. Just got to improve them. So if you aren't a follower of Jesus, or you want to remove God entirely from the equation, it's pretty much all you're left with. You got to try to move one or both of these leverage points, one or both of these dials in a positive direction, and you got to hope it leads to you being happier and better. But my question to you would be, how confident are you that moving one of these dials is really going to work for you? Because haven't you gotten what you wanted in one or both of these areas, and it still didn't create lasting happiness? I mean, you thought at one point in your life, if I just make X amount of money, or if I was worth this amount of money, I'll be good. But you got it. You've actually hit it. You're still not happier. Or you thought, if I can just end up here relationally, I just need to meet somebody and get married, or I just need to have this happen where my family ends up like this, then I'll be happy. But you got there, and it did not deliver what you thought. So what are we missing? I mean, did we misjudge what kind of relationships we need? Did we miscalculate how much money's going to get us across the happiness goal line? No, I would suggest we just identified the wrong leverage points. Jesus taught that there is something way more foundational that influences our happiness and our life, because it moves both our love and our money. What he taught was foundational was trust. So hear me out. According to Jesus, everything in life is driven by trust, because whoever or whatever you trust most has the most influence in your life. So who does the American way encourage us to trust? Ourselves. If it's going to be, it's up to me, right? I got to look out for myself first. I should always trust my own instincts. But while that sounds natural and while it feels right, it could be the very thing creating the biggest problem you have. because whoever or whatever you trust actually determines the outcome of your life. Now, over the next few episodes, we're going to explore how these three areas, love, money, and trust, how they interact with each other. But I want to start with how trust interacts with and influences our relationships. So think about it this way. Whenever I walk into any relationship, I come carrying with me a bucket full of desires, a bucket full of dreams, a bucket full of wishes of how I hope that relationship will be. I mean, there are desires about how decisions will be made, about how money will be spent, about how we'll communicate with each other, about how often we'll talk, about all these kinds of things. You got desires about how conflicts are going to be resolved. I mean, we should just get everything on the table and deal with it fast. That's how some of you want to handle conflict. Or we should hold it in, not say anything because we don't offend anybody. But you've got an idea of how you want conflict to be resolved between you and the other person. Every once in a while, some of you are like, oh, it's healthy to raise our voices and argue things out. Or some of you are like, oh, we're never going to raise our voices in this friendship or this family. It's just disrespectful and unkind. You've got desires around your schedule, right? If you're married, you're thinking, well, you'll be home every night at 5:30 for family dinner. Or no, we'll hardly ever eat family dinner at home because we're busy doing stuff. We're going to spend our free time together, or we need our space to hang with other friends. My point is, you just come into every single relationship carrying this bucket full of all these desires or dreams or hopes. And they've been shaped for the most part as a reaction to the home you grew up in, or previous friendships you had, or a previous marriage that didn't last. And then you entered the relationship, and you unknowingly, none of us do this intentionally, but you and I unknowingly dump all of those desires on the other person. The problem is they don't feel like desires to that person. They feel like expectations. And the problem with expectations is when somebody actually meets your expectations, they don't get any credit. They just met what was required. They don't get a thank you, because why would I express gratitude for something that I think you should have already done? It's why your bank doesn't send you a touching thank you note with a gift card when you pay off your mortgage. It was just expected you were going to pay off your mortgage. You owed them, that's what you were supposed to do. But when you let that mentality creep into your relationships, well, then you reduce or you remove the opportunity for selfless love between you and the other person. See, love says, I'm doing this for you because I want to, and because I value you, not because I have to measure up to your expectations. But you drop expectations into the relationship, and love has no room to breathe. Love's never recognized or appreciated. And you're worn out feeling like you can never make that person happy because, let's be honest, your best efforts barely meet their expectations. So expectations impact the quality of your relationship. Now, if you're thinking, wait a minute, Matt, I should be able to expect things like respect, companionship, acceptance, intimacy, love, understanding, appreciation, acceptance. Those are all good things. Absolutely, they're good things. They're actually God-given desires. The problem is, you might have put them in the wrong bucket. As long as they're considered expectations, you can never be happy with the relationship. But if you keep them in a desires bucket, there's plenty of room for happiness to grow. Now, here's the thing. I got to be honest. If it were that simple, we could just take all of our expectations, dump them into a desires bucket, just move right along, and everything would be great. But you know intuitively there is resistance to that idea inside of you, isn't there? And the reason is because you are not confident that you'll get all those things you want if you don't expect and demand them. And what you've done right there is you've just put your finger on the leverage point of trust. So Peter's one of Jesus' closest friends. He gives us some advice, some insight into this idea that who we trust determines what we expect from people. Here is what he wrote. He said, all of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Now, why would Peter start there? Well, because humility is thinking of others before yourself. And when you're dumping all your expectations on the other person, who are you thinking about? You're thinking about you. I'm thinking about me. I need you to meet my expectations. But Peter says, okay, hang on. God opposes the proud. And Peter would have known because he had a lot of pride. When he followed Jesus, he was placing expectations on everyone around him, including Jesus. But over the years, he had gained the wisdom to see, all right, I can find joy in relationships and in life, but it's going to happen when I take the focus off of me and when I put it on others. So here's what he invites us to do. He writes, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Another way of saying this is, put your trust and your dependence in God for all of your desires to be met. See, if I place these expectations on you, who am I depending on to meet them? Well, yeah, I'm depending on you. But if I bring them all to God, and God put these desires in me to begin with, and I trust him to meet those desires, well, then I won't put the expectations on you anymore, which means now there's room for love and for joy in our relationship. Now there's room for a healthy relationship. So Peter invites us to change where we put our trust. He says, cast all your anxiety on Jesus because he cares for you. In other words, he says, hey, why don't you just take your big bucket of desires and expectations, everything you're carrying, just dump them on God. Why don't you trust him with all your fears, all your worries, all your needs, all your concerns? To which we might say, wait a minute, are you sure that's going to work, Peter? And he would go, oh yeah, I'm sure. Because I know he cares for you. I know it'll work because you matter to him. Your dreams and desires and wishes, they matter to Jesus. You can trust him with them. To which you might say, or I might say, well, Peter, how do you know? And I think he would tell us, well, I spent 3 years with Jesus. So I saw with my own eyes how much he cares for us. And then I watched him give his life to prove his love for you. Peter would say, if I'm confident of one thing, it's that Jesus cares. You can trust him. See, here's the reality. Eventually, you and I, we all cast our expectations somewhere. If you cast them on your spouse, it's going to rob your marriage of joy. If you cast them on a friend, it's only a matter of time before it suffocates the relationship. If you trust yourself and decide you'll demand the people in your life live up to your expectations, you're going to end up emotionally alone. You may end up physically alone. But if you will trust Jesus, if you will cast your expectations, worries, fears, and desires on him, he promises to carry them for you. Does that mean you shouldn't talk to your spouse or your partner or your friend about what you desire? No. You can have those conversations. But you can do it by saying, hey, I need to own something. I have been expecting things out of you that I should have only hoped for and wished for. I've not been grateful. I've set an unattainable bar for you to try to meet. I'm sorry. So tell me where you feel pressure to live up to my expectations. And I'm going to own it, and I'm going to change. Now, when you do that, and then they meet some of those desires, guess what? You can be grateful. You'll want to say thank you. But you don't have to expect them to make you happy. Because the reality is, only Jesus is built to carry all your expectations for happiness. So would you let him have them? If you will, your relationships will be so much freer. He invites you to give all your cares to him because he does care for you. So I want to invite you right now to do what he asked. Would you trust Jesus enough to cast all your expectations, your anxieties, your worries, your fears, your frustrations? Would you just hand them all to him right now? Would you trust him with all your caring? You can, because he really does care for you.